Welcome to Hope Matters, a production of Mount Olive Lutheran Church here in Santa Monica, California. I'm Pastor Shafer, the senior pastor here at Mount Olive. Each week we talk to an interesting person from around the community, around the nation, even around the world, about the theme of hope, because we believe that hope matters. My guest today is Pastor Melanie Martin Dent, who is pastor of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Polson, Montana. Welcome, Pastor Melanie. We're so glad you're with us today.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Our viewers are all over the world, Pastor, but I doubt if there are too many in Montana, although I do have friends there. And I assume Polson is a fairly rural community. So tell our viewers a little bit about what ministry and life is like in Polson, Montana.
Okay. Well, again, I'm pastor of Good Shepherd Lutheran Church in Polson, as he mentioned. Polson is about an hour and a half north of Missoula and about an hour south of Kalispell. So we are the county seat for Lake County. It has a distinction of being on the reservation of the Salish, Kootenai, and Ponderay people. I've been saying Kalisput, Salish, Kalisput, and Kasanka so long I'm trying to remember the English names. But we are a typical, largely white congregation, and have roots in the folks who came here during the allotment days when the reservation was open for settling. We're on the shores of Flathead Lake, which is a beautiful, lovely lake, surrounded by mountains, the Mission Mountains, and it's a beautiful place to live. A lot of good salt of the earth people, and
Are they mainly involved in ranching and farming, or is it all kinds of positions?
We have a lot of retirees. So further south in the valley, the next church down has more of the agricultural community. Our heritage is very much in there. The church actually was started at Valley View, which is a community that has a old schoolhouse community center and no community anymore. And they moved to the big town of Polson. There's some timber history there. Right now, the economy is it's a tourist kind of town. So our population doubles at least in the summertime. And it's odd in that we have a 25% poverty rate and 20% indigenous people. And we have multi-million-dollar lakefront homes and mountaintop homes. So we kind of have a wide spectrum of life here.
I guess it sounds a little bit in a more open area like some of West Virginia, where they have that great contrast between rich and poor in some of these beautiful areas. But well, you are also one of the founding persons of an organization called the Fellowship of Recovering Lutheran Clergy, formed more than 30 years ago. I don't think too many of our viewers know about the Fellowship of Recovering Lutheran Clergy. So would you mind telling us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it is an organization that we founded to support pastors recovering from alcoholism and any other addiction that there is. We did begin in 1990 when I was sober for 10 years. The Alcoholics Anonymous International Convention was in Seattle that year, and one of the workshops was a clergy AA meeting, and I thought, oh, this is it. We need more of this. And there was some sort of church-wide meeting in Seattle a month or two later, and Joseph Wagner, who was a head of the Division of Ministry at that time, I talked to him, and he said, oh, Melanie, you don't want the organizational church to be involved with. Just do an informal network. Send out a letter to everybody you can think of and just kind of start. So I did that. One of the letters that I sent went to Park Ridge Hospital in Chicago, and there on a chaplain's desk, it crossed with a young Missouri Synod pastor who was fairly new in recovery, had just been to a retreat sponsored by the Recovered Alcoholics Association, RACA, and he was trying to start something. And so he was in the East Coast, North Carolina. I was on the West Coast, Washington State. We met on a desk in Chicago, He had organized their advice was, let's get you a Wheat Ridge grant. Let's organize a board of directors and you can decide what you want to do. So we like had opposite. It was just amazing. We were so opposite, but dovetailed. That was like really a God thing. So for a long time, I had the newsletter and the database and he had the money, and we met. And the first meeting I went to was actually 7 Missouri guys and me. And they were all like in suits and ties. And I come with my, West Coast casual. And anyways, we did begin with a retreat in Mundelein, Illinois. And we had a speaker who was well known, particularly in Missouri circles. And we kind of blew the speaker away. So the first night we were doing introductions. We had about 21, 22 people there. We were going around the circle asking everyone to introduce themselves. And they essentially, everybody told their first step recovery story, what it was like, how they got into recovery. And our speaker was Bruce Hartung. He was utterly blown away by the candidness of this group because he's used to clergy groups where everybody's a little more guarded and professional, shall we say. So the next morning he started giving his presentation, and by the first break, rebellion was fermenting. Someone said, he's just giving the same presentation he gives to pastors anywhere. This is a conference, it's like we could have anywhere. I want to talk to you all. So we rebelled and we took over the agenda of his retreat, and we did what we needed to do, which has kind of been a lot the history of this group. So several years ago, we had a vision of expanding beyond clergy to laity, and we worked together to sponsor the first Addiction and Faith Conference in Bloomington, Minnesota. And that was a total act of faith. So one of our keynote speaker was Nadja Boltz-Weber. And it's like, I signed this contract to pay what was then her regular going speaking rate with a prayer of, please, oh Lord, let us be able to do this and, not end up in legal trouble for lack of money. We had no idea how this was going to go. But we ended up having 100 or so people. It grew to couple hundred people the next year. Then COVID hit, and like everything else, we've been regrouping. Out of the conference, we spun off the Center of Addiction and Faith, which is really right now it's a Christian organization, but we've had inquiries from people who are Jewish, Islamic faith, of a variety of different faith perspectives than our own. We have a website seeking to have resources to support people in recovery of faith, whatever that may be.
Wonderful. Well, as you probably know, I had Edward Treat on 2 or 3 weeks ago to talk about the Addiction and Faith, the Center for Addiction and Faith. And yeah, so our viewers who've seen both of these have heard about this before, but wonderful. That's very helpful. So does this play out in your, go ahead.
I just want to interject that Ed was a seminary student at the first conference. He attended the very first retreat, and he was a seminarian. Wondering if he could come.
He told a wild story about how he got introduced to Lutheranism through making a wrong turn, ending up at Holden Village. It's a great story.
The Village, yep.
Yeah,
yep.
But our viewers who haven't watched that one should watch that one. He tells that story about his time at the Lutheran camp in Holden Village and in Washington State. So it's wonderful. In your does this work in the 12-step programs have a bearing on your day-to-day ministry in Polson, Pastor?
Yeah, well, it is so much a part of my life. It seems like even when I don't consciously preach something that I think has to do with the 12 steps, somebody can find it there. I mean, after I've now been sober for 42 years and participating in recovery for 42 years, it's part of the fiber of my being. It's not, so that, yes, we have developed at this congregation an addiction ministry team working through the Center of Addiction and Faith with faith partners. And we had our first recovery Sunday where we had team members tell a little bit about their story and their faith journey and what it meant to them to be part of this team. So we have some intentional ministries beginning here, but honestly, there's probably not a sermon, not a class, not a pastoral interaction that is not, that it somehow touches on that part of how I've experienced God in my life.
Wonderful, wonderful. If I could switch gears just for a little bit to talk about the congregation, the setting more generally. You serve now in different parts of the church and different parts of the country. What are some of the unique things about serving where you're serving now?
What are the unique things about being in Montana?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I've been in Montana since 1997, so I've been here for a little. I'm
You've been
still
here
kind
a
of a
while.
newcomer in Montana terms, but
Yeah.
I've been here for a while. And I came through the Pacific Northwest through Washington, specifically Western Washington and Northern Idaho. So Montana is a state with a lot of geography and smaller groups of people.
Right.
So the first call in Montana, my husband and I served a 4-point parish where one of them did the loop to the 2 north churches. That was a 97-mile loop. And then one of us did the 35 miles
Wow.
to the 2 south congregations. So the distances are pronounced. And there's also a large cultural and economic difference between the eastern part of the state and the western part of the state. So the eastern part of the state is much more agricultural based and politically conservative. The West has its politically conservative parts too. But there are also, most of what Democrats you find in Montana live in the West or central. So ministry here includes, driving for 4 hours for a 1-hour meeting.
Yeah, yeah.
4 hours one way. So when we're in Malta, it was 200 miles. We live 200 miles east of Great Falls, 200 miles west of Williston, North Dakota, 200 miles north of Billings, Montana, and 200 miles south of Swift Current, Saskatchewan. So
that's travel, and it's a lot different in California, except we end up spending a lot of time on the road for other reasons here. But,
right.
So as you look
but
at
we
this,
probably have a bigger problem hitting deer than
you probably
on
have a
the
bigger
road.
problem hitting deer. Yes.
Not hitting other cars nearly much. My foster daughter said, "Mom, I hit a deer." And I said, "Of course you did, honey. You live in Montana." Sometimes the deer hit us. My first one was the deer jumped out of the ditch and hit my car on the side.
I believe it. I believe it. So Pastor, where do you find hope in your life and your ministry in 2022?
God with us, expressed in every way through whether through prayer or worship or scripture or other people. So in the community and in the resources of faith. My faith practices include some non-traditional kinds of things. I own horses, and going outdoors every day to feed horses is a faith practice for me. That's a form of prayer. I also play flute and piccolo in the symphony in Butte, Montana, which is okay. It's a 3-hour drive one way to a rehearsal, and but music is also a form of prayer for me, and they're prayer in different ways, using different parts of my body, mind, and spirit, and all together they keep me going.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And thank you for being with us today for Hope Matters. I really appreciate it, Pastor. This has been Hope Matters, a production of Mount Olive Lutheran Church here in Santa Monica, California. Our guest today has been Pastor Melanie Martin Dent from Polson, Montana, who serves Good Shepherd Lutheran Church and the ELCA congregation in Montana. Pastor, thank you for being with us today.
Well, you're welcome. I didn't tell you I can see the lake and the mountains at my office window, did I?
All right. Wonderful. We'll let that one go for now. All right.
Okay.
Join us again next week when we talk to another interesting person about the theme of hope, because we believe that hope matters, and we believe in a God of hope.